Welcome back, AP Gov students. Today is Chapter 3 of Keeping the Republic, titled Politics of the American Founding. If you don't know Keeping the Republic, it's fine because the content is still going to be the same. I'm going to be going over all the key terms and notes for this chapter that helped me get a 5, so I encourage you to take notes along as well. Slavery, system of involuntary servitude. It was established in the Americas with a strict racial hierarchy, putting black people at the bottom and white people at the top. Slavery, technically in its origins, was an economic institution, but it had obviously massive effects on society and social life, and then of course American government. When you hear the term systemic racism and structural racism, this dates back to how slavery affected the American government. So the American government responded to slavery as an institution by setting up a system that constantly, in all facets of government, put white people at the top and put black people at the bottom. And this evolved greater and greater in the American government until the civil rights movement started to reverse all that. So slavery in an APUSH sense is a lot more talked about because slavery was a massive era in American history, and a massive horrible era in American history. But in terms of AP Gov, you want to think about slavery as the origins of racism in American government. Popular sovereignty, the power of the people to govern. The lack of popular sovereignty among the people in the colonies greatly influenced the eventual revolution and split from Great Britain. So because people didn't have representation in Great Britain, the no taxation without representation thing, that inspired a lot of the American independence movement. And popular sovereignty is a big principle in American government because people have the right to participate in government and vote for who they want and talk to their elected representatives and things like that. Common Sense, independence pamphlet written by Thomas Paine, the best-selling book by, I'm pretty sure by population percentage in American history, and it still is. It became one of the most influential pieces of writing of all time and helped to unite colonists under the idea of independence from Great Britain. Common Sense reflected a lot of Enlightenment ideals, which really resonated with American, colonists, I guess you could say. The Declaration of Independence, official document presented by the colonies for independence. It invoked many Enlightenment ideas to justify the colonies becoming independent from Great Britain and listed how the British government had violated the colonies. The Declaration of Independence is a required document in Gov, I'm pretty sure, but it doesn't really matter a whole lot. But just know that the list of grievances are very important, and the ideals in the first part of the Declaration of Independence is really important to how American government was set up by the Constitution. Constitution, document establishing rules that make up how government should run. The U.S. had multiple constitutions. Of course, you had the Articles of Confederation at first, and then the U.S. Constitution. And constitutional debates are at the heart of government, especially in terms of the Supreme Court. Articles of Confederation, the first American Constitution. They contain many flaws, specifically surrounding the lack of central power and the inability for state governments to unite and exert control. So because of the weak government that was set up under the Articles, the U.S. Constitution was crafted, which still stands today. Confederation, system where each state has power over itself. A country is divided into smaller states that have control over itself, and individual rights are handled by states, creating a weak central government. The reason the Articles was set up this way is because they had just come from a monarchy, a big central government in Great Britain, so they set up a confederation where states had a lot more autonomy and there's basically no central government. But this became a problem because you can't really have a unified country without a central government, so that's why the Constitution was eventually crafted. Constitutional Convention, meeting of political thinkers to revise the Articles. Instead of revision, the convention eventually decided to replace the Articles altogether, leading to the creation of a new constitution. The story behind the Constitutional Convention is that it wasn't really supposed to be this radical change. It was just a meeting over why the Articles were failing, but they ended up crafting the U.S. Constitution. Federalism, powers divided between different levels of government. It was at the heart of an important compromise surrounding how the central and state governments should share power. Federalism is probably the most used term in AP Gov, probably the one you're going to have to master the most. You have to be able to separate federalism from separation of powers. It's not about separation of bodies in the government. It's about the separated but shared powers between the national government and state governments. Virginia Plan, large state plan to organize Congress. Favored large states by apportioning representatives based on population size. The larger states obviously like this plan because they would have more delegates in Congress. They'd have more, greater representation in Congress because their populations are bigger. New Jersey Plan, small state plan to organize Congress. Favored small states by giving each state an equal amount of representatives. So the small states like this more because they would be on an equal playing field in terms of representation with the massive states. There are some more nuances to the Virginia plan and New Jersey plan, but these are probably the most important details. The Great Compromise, combination of both plans to create a bicameral Congress. This is how the House and Senate was made. It created the House and Senate, gave the central government more power under a federalist structure and a single executive. So the House is the Virginia plan type thing, where you have representatives based on population, and the Senate is the equal body, two representatives for each state. That's the New Jersey plan part. And it gave the central government more power. It expanded the powers from where it was in the Articles, and it decided on a single executive being the president. There was talks about having this body of presidents, like there would be like 3 or 4 presidents. I'm pretty sure that's what Hamilton proposed or something like that, but they eventually decided on one president, which was a good idea because you have to have a singular head of government to make it effective and to make the government easier to understand. 3/5 Compromise defined a slave as 3/5 of a person for population purposes. This is because slave states wanted slaves to count in their population and get more representatives in the House, but small states, not only do they not want to be outmanned by the slave states, but they're also like, if you're the non-slave states, or like if you have slaves, they're not even citizens, how do they count for your population? There's huge ethical problems with all that. It was a compromise between North and South to make sure Southern states couldn't inflate their number of representatives through slave populations. Slaves, of course, they couldn't even vote, so this is always ridiculous for the South. It's one of the many problems during the slavery era. The Federalist Papers, collection of essays advocating for ratification. These papers became some of the greatest essays ever written. They express and explain the purpose and reasoning behind the formation of American government. The Federalist Papers are a huge part of AP Gov. You have to know the required documents. I'm pretty sure it's Federalist 10, Federalist 51, Federalist 70, and Federalist 78. 10 and 51 are definitely most important. You're going to want to know those to heart. Factions, groups of people with a common ideal. This is expressed a lot in Federalist 10, I believe. The dangers of radical factions were a key topic of debate within the Federalist Papers. A lot of it was, how do you have a functioning democracy? If you want to have people participate in government, how do you eliminate people who are radical and groups who want to band together to put people in government that will affect only their ideals? And the way to balance out factions was having more people represented in government would allow factions to counter each other out so that they'd have to compromise to get things done. That's a huge part of what Federalist 10 is. Bill of Rights, list of rights protecting people from the government. It was added to the Constitution out of fear that the central government could abuse citizens. So the anti-federalist people, when they kind of decided, okay, fine, we'll implement the Constitution, we'll vote for it, they wanted to have a list of rights to make sure the government couldn't oppress the people, and that's what the Bill of Rights is. And that's a wrap. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next chapter, and goodbye. Yo, if you're super cool and awesome, you should follow my Twitter or X if you're that kind of person. It's at Clark4724. I post a lot of random stuff on there, but I also post channel updates and when my next videos are coming out. So if you're gonna keep watching my channel, then I recommend you follow, and thanks.